So Steve, we've been mentioning some of the great functionality that's available in Azure, and that can enable us to do rapid application development. But really, why should we care? What's in it for the business?
That's a really important question, and I want to blazing fast go through some of the key high points of Azure and why you might be considering Azure as your cloud provider. Let's look at the slide and see the very first one of these, which is high availability and disaster recovery. Azure is everywhere across the globe, and we can replicate our sites across the globe. We can replicate them inside of a data center. We can restore from automated backups. We can very quickly get back up to speed if something goes down. Does it? It could, and we could recover almost immediately, if not just fail over into those secondary data centers potentially. Next, we can protect our things very easily with daily backups. When we look at Azure, again, I'm just going to keep going through these slides. If we look at the security and hybrid connectivity, things like it's baked in. Microsoft has hundreds of people working strictly on security. People often say, well, I can't put my stuff in the cloud because it might not be secure. That kind of feels a little weird for me because I ask, how many dozens of people do they have focused 100% all the time on security in their 24-hour data center? And the usually is zero. They've got people building out some important things, but they're not focused. This is a core piece of Azure and a core piece of what all cloud providers do to make sure that they don't lose your business. They cannot have a breach, and they spend a lot of time and money on security. Azure more than anyone. Flexible, that hybrid connections and VPNs, we can connect up in many different ways, locally to on-premise. And lastly, compliance. If we have compliance issues that we want to deal with, verified by auditors, Microsoft has worked with a bunch of different regulatory agencies to set up what's necessary to keep compliance under Azure. We've got industry-leading SLAs and support, so 99.95% uptime SLAs for websites. You've got uptime SLAs for single VMs, and better if you can have two VMs that fail over into each other, even better uptime. For databases, we've got 99.99% uptime. We've got support. If you can, something bad happens, you can get on the phone and call Microsoft and get support almost immediately. We also work as support. Colin, we've gotten calls as well from our customers who call us directly and say, we've got a question in Azure, and we can jump in and help them out immediately. And it's proven. It's being used widely throughout the industry. I love this just example. Just Azure Active Directory, this small little chunk where people are authenticating. There's 12 billion plus authentications every week on Azure. Let's talk a little bit about scaling. One of the benefits you mentioned was scaling, the ability to automatically scale up and scale down as your website is getting more traffic or less traffic, or as your Azure function is getting more traffic or less traffic, or your Azure database, or. This is part of the core stuff that you get, is this scaling up and scaling out in this automated fashion. Extraordinarily flexibility, and of course, once again, global. We don't just scale up inside of one location on the globe, we can scale up geographically and scale out to the rest of the world. Superior performance, very powerful. The biggest publicly available machines, the G5, the Godzilla machine, is available right here on Azure, where you can get some of the most powerful machines on the planet. It's highly predictable. You run your Azure application in one location, you spin up another equivalent type machine somewhere else in the Azure ecosystem, you get that predictable performance. So you can know how to expand, how to contract, and what your costs are going to be. And of course, highly efficient. Microsoft has done so much to make sure that it limits the traffic between data centers or speeds through content delivery network the experience of your users. All of these things are Azure benefits that you get out of the box. Whew, and there's more! Familiar tools. Let's just talk about building code. I'm a Visual Studio and a Visual Studio Code kind of guy. And that means I'm in this particular editor working with something I'm familiar with and I can push to Azure. And you may say, yes, but I use Eclipse on a Linux box. Well, you've got plugins for that. It doesn't matter anymore. This is not a Windows Visual Studio only world. You want to use a different editor, you want to come in with Atom, it doesn't matter. Come in with the tool of your choice, and it's going to plug right in, and you're going to be able to deploy to Azure. It's open. Not only are the tools open, the familiar tools, but the familiar operating systems. You've got a vast variety of Linux machines out there. You've got Windows, different versions. Build on what you're used to. Self-healing. I mean, the list goes on, but I would just quickly say, things break. And when things break, you don't want to have to go in and figure out where they broke, debug. In a lot of cases, we get self-healing right out of the box. When we start talking things like the service fabric, that's baked into the platform is self-healing. But Azure itself has several self-healing modules that when something goes down, we can catch it and spin up something beside it. It's automatic. We don't have to have this manual input all the time. And it's continuous. We're monitoring all the time. And speaking of monitoring, this is another critical place. We want to be able to monitor everything that's happening across Azure. And with one place, we can see all the stuff that's happening in Azure. And we can see what's happening, monitor it, learn from it, feed that information right back in so we can automatically and continuously improve on it. And then off to my favorite, this DevOps cadence. And when it comes to the benefits of Azure, I just want to talk straight to the developers out there. This is, I consider, extraordinarily important because we can build and deploy in this very, very, very fast loop. Colin, when he joined Northwest Cadence, we worked on a wonderful project together, and that project was a Visual Cadence. It was a reporting platform, and we decided to take the whole thing and drop it into Azure itself, and we'd build platform as a service. And when we were in the coding phase, we were going to production 3, 5, sometimes 12 and 13 times a day, safely, promoting through environments on this extraordinarily rapid cadence. And that means you can get what you're doing to your customers, get feedback, and improve on it in this very quick cadence. And that's where so much business value comes from. Whew, I'm going to take a breath. That was a lot. But those business values that you get just span across so well from top to bottom in Azure that it pains me to do any type of development anywhere else.